And welcome to Off the Dome Sports. My name is Sean Militello, your host for Off the Dome Sports, and we're joined by our friend Mr. Bob Rose, who covers the Saints as the contributing writer for the Saints News Network, which is part of Sports Illustrated. And he's also the co-host for the BayouBlitz Podcast. And how's it going, Bob? Thanks for coming on, and thanks for taking time out of your day for joining us.
Sean, I'm doing pretty well, and I want to thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the last time we talked, and I think you put on a good show. Everybody that's tuning in, I hope you're having a great 2022 so far, and that it continues if you are.
Yeah, and I remember the last time I had you on, it was at the beginning of the season, before the first game of the season against the Packers, and we were talking about Jameis Winston.
Mhm.
We were talking about the hurricane and how it affected things playing in Jacksonville. Man, what a season. And honestly, what a start to the offseason. I mean, crazy. Sean Payton stepping away. I never thought it would actually happen. I know we heard some rumblings each year, to the Cowboys and whatsoever, but we also heard some rumblings of him wanting to step away. He finally did it. So I just wanted to get you get you to get that initial reaction to Sean Payton stepping away and not retiring, but just stepping away. How do you feel about that? It's crazy to see after 15 seasons.
Boy, oh boy, I tell you what a gut punch to start the off season, right? I mean, we knew it was going to be a topsy turvy and a turbulent Saints off season coming in. And this was well before Sean Payton really hit us out of the blue. I know I, for one, was shocked. I know Michael Lombardi, Ian Rappaport, among others, were reporting that Sean was thinking about stepping away in the days before the official announcement. But I kind of look foolish because I went after those guys in a very public forum. Because they've been saying this kind of this kind of stuff for the last 8-10 years. So I suppose if you report the same thing year after year after year, eventually you're going to be right. But I respect Coach Payton's decision. I do. As a coach myself, certainly, and not at the level that not near the level that he was. Uh, I reached a point in my coaching career where, after the end of each season, once I started to contemplate taking a little bit more time away each year, I knew it was only a matter of time. And that's all. I wouldn't be surprised to see Coach resurface in a year or two if he recharges his batteries, because he's still a young guy at 58 years old. He takes pretty good care of himself. But just listening to his press conference, he just sounded like a guy to me that just needed a little bit of time. If this stepping away turns out to be a forever retirement from coaching pro football, so be it. I think Sean will be a success in anything he chooses to do. I'd love to see him in the broadcast booth personally, or in a football studio, for pregame and halftime, because I think that's where his forte is. If it's not on the sideline, but he gave us such an unforgettable period of time as a New Orleans Saints coach. Really unprecedented in Saints history. And I guarantee you that there are a bunch of other NFL franchises and fan bases that would have absolutely loved to have the same 15-year run that Coach Payton gave us and the New Orleans Saints.
And yes, and I like how you brought up your personal experience, and it kind of gives because you said you were a coach, right? And it kind of gives you a perspective of what it is like a coach, and I think maybe Sean, his new movie Home Team, right? I just watched it last night, and it kind of gives you a perspective of his thought process over the years, from the Bounty Gate Super Bowl to Bounty Gate to all the way up to now. It kind of gives you the perspective, like, you know, Sean Payton has missed a lot in his life, personal life. You know, I people didn't really think Home Team would have been a serious movie, but it sort of was. It was a serious movie, and I think that played a factor. I think this is something he's been thinking about for a while now, and I think when Drew Brees retired and you seen him going into the broadcast booth, and I think that played a part as well. And this past year had been mentally draining You know, I mean, you're talking about the hurricane. You're going with all these injuries and COVID, and it was just one big giant mess. And to come out like he did, it was just, he put in a lot of work. His coaching staff put in a lot of work, and I think it was just mentally draining for him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how could it not be? Like you said, he's a family man. His kids are grown, but remember, he just got married last year. And he did allude to the fact that coaching puts a strain on and not just a marriage specifically, but your family life in general. And as home team, sort of revealed to us, if people that didn't already know, a coach, a player, really anybody in the sport, if you're going to be any kind of success, you have to give on the full dedication, and like it or not, that ends up taking precedence over everything in your personal life. Oftentimes, even your family, your spouse or your children, and I'm sure that has to kill these guys, that do this for a living. Again, all the more respect to Sean Payton for not only the decision to do what he's done in his life up to this point, but the wherewithal and personal inflection to really look and say, you know what, now it's time to step away. I know I've missed a lot, and you can't go back in time, and I don't think he has any regrets. But sort of hit a restart for your whole life, and it really is opening a new chapter on an entire book that is your life. And I know he's going to do very well at it. And anybody that doesn't respect the decision for someone to step away, regardless of when they choose to do it, frankly, you just don't have the insight into what these men and women, that do this kind of profession, you have to give up just to do it.
And for sure, and I respect the decision, and I, because for me, I work a lot. In my former job, I was working 6-7 days a week, and it was taking a strain of my personal life. I was working 50 to 60 hours a week, and it's one of the jobs I wanted, and I worked hard to get up to that point. But it's just like, you know what? It's not really worth it if I'm not spending time, with my family, or interacting with friends, or doing anything outside of work that where you're supposed to do to enjoy life. And I respect that decision. But there's a part of me, and I sounded off of Twitter on this, and I'm fine with Sean Payton stepping down. I'm totally am. But my thing is, and here's the question mark, he's stepping away, right? Doesn't like the word retirement. Now, he's not going to do it in a year. He might not do it in 2 years. But I'm thinking about, 3 years, 2023, 2024. I think he might come back. And honestly, if he does come back and goes to a different team, I don't know how I would feel about that. I have a sort of a rage about that. I don't know, man. How would you feel about that if he came back to coaching, and let's say he went to the Cowboys, and how would you feel about that situation?
Sean, I won't lie, the fan in me, and I was thinking about this as we were covering his press conference, the fan in me would go into a full-blown rage, because Sean Payton to me is the New Orleans Saints. This version of the New Orleans Saints was built by Sean Payton. So I don't, as a fan, I don't know how you could not feel at least a certain sense of betrayal. Now that feeling of betrayal, or that feeling of rage that you and I just, both just used that word, the level of which I'm sure would depend on what team hypothetically he would choose to come out of retirement for. And I know he doesn't like to use the retirement. Listen, when I retired from coaching, I didn't like to use the word retirement either. It makes us sound old. But whether you choose to use retirement, resigning, stepping away, whatever the case is, I would try my best as a man and as a competitor to respect if Sean Payton came out of retirement. But there's no question, as a fan, and as a fan of this team since I was a kid, I would definitely feel angry and feel a certain sense of betrayal.
And for sure, out of all the teams, the Cowboys, and I think out of all the teams he could go I think it would be the Cowboys, because I mean, we seen these rumors every year. He might lead the Saints for the Cowboys. There's some truth to that. He's always been interested in the Cowboys. He used to be a former coach with the Cowboys. His mentor Bill Parcells was the head coach for the Cowboys. That's where he's got in most of his experience. Was with the Cowboys. Well, I wouldn't say most of his experience, but most of most of the things he learned from Bill Parcells was with the Cowboys. I don't know if he coached with Bill Parcells before then or after, not too sure. But I just think going to the Cowboys, you're giving up the power you have, and that's what I don't quite understand. And I understand they got a good, talented team. Dak Prescott, Zeke Elliott, which obviously a lot of people think he's overrated, but he still got Tony Pollard. CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Dalton Schultz is one of the most underrated tight ends in the league. A pretty good offensive line. I mean, who wouldn't want to go to the Dallas Cowboys? My thing is, why would you want to go deal with Jerry Jones? You seen with Jimmy Johnson. Bill Parcells is another guy. 2 big-name head coaches, 2 Hall of Fame head coaches. And Jimmy Johnson was a dear friend with Jerry Jones, and he still couldn't get along with him. I just don't think, why would you go for that? It's not about the money. You can get all the money with us, and I know Jerry Jones is one of the richest men in all of America, way more money than the Benson family, but the Benson family has money. They could pay you what you want, and it's not about that. It's just, you're right. It would be betrayal, and it would set the Saints Twitter on fire, and it was NFL on fire. It would be crazy. Yeah. But I think most realistically, I would hope he would come back to football, but more of a front office role. Kind of like what Bill Walsh did, and even Bill Parcells. Bill Walsh stepped away from football in the peak of his coaching days, and he stepped away, and he didn't really know how he felt about it, and so he steps in the front office role. Unfortunately, I believe he passes away a few years after that. But I just feel like that's something he might do. You've seen the big tune of Bill Parcells do the same thing as a front office role in Miami. I feel like that should be the goal for him if he does want to get back in football. He basically owns a part of the Saints. Like you just said, he is the Saints. And to go to another team, that would just be mind-boggling. And I don't know if Saints fans will ever respect him again. So that would just be a crazy thing. Now, he's gone, right? So who are we going to replace him with? Dennis Allen. He's I would say he's the favorite amongst players, favorite amongst Sean Payton. I don't know about favorite about fans. I think it's 50-50. So Dennis Allen, how do you feel about him if he was to get the job at head coach?
I love Dennis Allen. Certainly as a defensive coordinator. Everything that Sean Payton built in New Orleans, there's a hierarchy of people that helped him build it. It's not like Sean Payton is the second coming of the Almighty and came in and all these great things started to happen all because of Sean Payton. And Dennis Allen was crucial to everything that Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints have built since 2006, because Allen has been with them in some capacity since 2006. Dennis has a head coaching experience. He did leave the Saints, for a 4-year period. First as defensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos in 2011. Then an unfortunate stint with the Oakland Raiders for a little over 2 years. Before Dennis came back to Payton and the Saints in 2015. And a lot of critics of Dennis Allen are going to point to his failure, his unsuccessful tenure as the Raiders coach. He was 8-28, and almost in a little over 2 years of coaching. I think he's a capable guy. I think he's a wonderful defensive coordinator. And we showed a glimpse of what he could do on the sidelines when he had to step in for Sean Payton, go on the road with a depleted roster, and beat the Super Bowl champions on national TV. I think that that's the kind of coach that Dennis Allen could be. And again, I realize what critics are gonna point to. And Dennis is still a young guy. He's 49 years old. To me, that's young because I'm 49 years old. So to any critics of that, I'm gonna say two names here: Bill Belichick and Mike Shanahan. Bill Belichick had his first head coaching job with the Cleveland Browns. Some people might not even remember that. In 5 years with Cleveland, he had one winning season, went 36-44. Mike Shanahan, who's going to be in the Hall of Fame as a coach someday, won 2 Super Bowls with the Denver Broncos. His first coaching job was with the LA Raiders in the late 80s. He went 8-12 before Al Davis fired him. So, don't judge Dennis Allen on just that coaching audition. You have to look at the organization, the Raiders at the time, and really much still to this day. The Raiders are a cesspool. I mean, it's a dysfunctional organization, and especially in those days, Al Davis was in his waning years, not even close to the icon that he was. So Dennis was in a bad situation, as was Belichick with those Browns, as was Shanahan with those Raiders. And I mentioned Belichick and Shanahan because it was clear to them, and both of them have said it in the interviews, they learned so much between their first and second stints as coach. They grew up, they learned how to organize and prioritize things better. Because so much of your job description changes when you move from coordinator, regardless of how much you're in charge of, to a head coach. And I look at Dennis Allen as a guy, he's extremely intelligent. He learned under the best in Sean Payton. With Sean being an offensive guy, I think that's why Dennis is ready to be a head coach again, because Sean took care of the offense. Everybody knew that. So Dennis Allen, or whomever Sean Payton's defensive coordinator was in earlier years, they were completely in charge of the defense. So that's why I think Dennis Allen is ready to be a head coach again. And I do think he's going to be ultimately successful. But this front office is going to leave no stones unturned. They're also going to interview Aaron Glenn this week. We're hearing that they're still trying to work out details to talk to Byron Leftwich. They've already talked to Doug Peterson, Philly's former head coach, and they're going to talk to Brian Flores, Miami's former head coach. So while I agree with you, Dennis Allen has to be considered the favorite at this point. The Saints are going to conduct their share of interviews over the next week to week and a half for sure.
Absolutely, to do their due diligence, to make sure Dennis Allen is the guy, and you got to do that. And I think Brian Leftwich, it would be a great candidate. And I think the reasons why there's complications there, Bruce Arians might retire. So mm-hmm. I think there's something going on there. Tom Brady's going to retire. I know he backed out, but the thing is, I think he's losing a certain amount of money if he retires before February 6th. And I know he's filthy rich, but it doesn't matter. It's money's money.
Right.
So he's going to retire in February. I think it was like February 6th he can retire, and he can still obtain his contract money. So you got that, and all the free agents they have. I think there's a chance that Arians might retire. But yes, there's other excellent candidates, like you said. Doug Peterson, former Super Bowl winning head coach, with Nick Foles for half the season as quarterback, to go into the playoffs like he did with Nick Foles and beat the New England Patriots, Tom Brady, and Bill Belichick. That was very impressive. He's a guy that has Louisiana ties as a quarterback for ULM, or it was called, forgot what it was called back in the day, but I think it was called Northwest Louisiana. So he was a quarterback there. So he does have Louisiana ties. I believe his son tried out for the Saints as a tight end this offseason, I believe. So, and you also got Brian Leftwich, I feel like has connections with Jameis Winston, which we're going to be a guy we're going to talk about in just a minute. So there's a connection there. He's coached Jameis Winston, Aaron Glenn, former defensive back coach. Yeah. Not defense coordinator, defensive back coach. So he's familiar with the Saints. But what stuck out to me is Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram said his thoughts on Dennis Allen, and I wish I could have found the video, but I didn't. But he said, and don't quote me on this, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but he basically said that Dennis Allen is more than qualified for the
Mhm.
job, and both sides of the ball love him, offense and defense. He's beloved with that team, and rightfully so. I believe he spent what 12 seasons with the Saints off and
Mhm.
on. So he knows the organization very well. And then you can even go back to his family. His dad played for the Falcons, former linebacker, so he's familiar with the Saints as growing up. And he's a guy that he went to Texas A&M safety. So I mean, he's familiar with the Saints, and I think he is the perfect man for the job. But you got to do your due diligence. I absolutely agree. Do you think? I know Dennis Allen, he's the front runner, but do you think there's anybody that can, or is there anybody that's challenging him for that head coaching job? If it wasn't Dennis Allen, who would it be?
Uh, and that's a great question. And I don't think they're done interviewing candidates either. I like Doug Peterson a lot. Yeah, he's an offensive guy. He is extremely close to Sean Payton. People don't realize that the two of them are very, very good friends. Uh, but I think Peterson is a guy that would come in, and not much would change about the Saints offense as far as what they want to do on the field. Because you look back in Peterson's heyday with the Philadelphia Eagles, and that was a very quick rhythm offense, a lot like Sean Payton liked to run with New Orleans. A guy I personally like a lot is Byron Leftwich. He's a young guy. This would be his first head coaching job. But he's a very organized guy. Great film study, great student of the game. When he was a player, all of his coaches said that. And Bruce Arians in Tampa Bay was actually Leftwich's coach in Pittsburgh. Arians had zero hesitation to give Leftwich the opportunity at offensive coordinator when he had the chance to do so. Even with such a guy like Tom Brady coming in, you were still very comfortable with Leftwich. Leftwich is actually younger than Tom Brady, and he was able to handle that kind of responsibility. A guy people shouldn't overlook is Brian Flores. I think Flores got a bum deal in Miami. We talked about Belichick, Dennis Allen, Mike Shanahan's, first experience as a head coach in a bad situation. I think Flores is very comparable to that. That Miami front office, it's clear to me they don't know what they're doing. So I'd like to see Flores get a second opportunity as head coach, and he's interviewing throughout the league. The Saints aren't going to be his only interview. So if you're not going to go with a guy like Dennis Allen, and I also know the Benson family absolutely loves Aaron Glenn too. So don't discount Aaron Glenn. He's another guy. I know he was coordinator for Detroit this past season, but he's basically a Saints guy, a Sean Payton guy, a Saints family, a Who Dat family kind of guy. So maybe not a lot would change within the organization infrastructure. And that's where my question, to Mickey Loomis or any of those front office members would be, is when you make this decision as far as head coach, which is huge, how much are you willing to change within your entire organization on that sideline? Because a guy like Dennis Allen or Aaron Glenn, a Saints guy, they're going to make changes too. They're going to want to have their own personal stamp. There's no question. But you bring in a guy like from the outside, like a Leftwich, a Flores, a Peterson, you're liable to see a lot of changes. All of those assistants, I doubt Dennis Allen would stay as defensive coordinator. Pete Carmichael would probably be gone as offensive coordinator. Ryan Nielsen, who I love as a coach on the defensive line. He's a future head coach. There's no doubt in my mind. Most of those guys would probably be gone if you bring in a guy from the outside. So again, Mickey Loomis and ownership really has to answer the question to themselves: how much of a change are we willing to make from the culture that we've had the last 16 years?
And I love that you brought up Ryan Nielsen, because if Dennis Allen would have, let's say, if he would have actually got interviewed by Chicago and he was hired by Chicago, I feel like Ryan Nielsen could be outside the box hire at head coach. Cause like you said, he is
Absolutely.
a future head coach. And he's a guy that, you know, you look what he had to work with on the defensive line. He's a big part of the reason why Trey Henderson is doing what he is 2 years in a row. And guys like when Marcus Davenport is healthy and when he is on the roll, he's part of the reason why he's so good. Cam Jordan, you seen how he got off to a slow start. Then he hit it towards the end of the season. You know, a part of that, you know, maybe Ryan Nielsen helped him make some adjustments, you know, stuff like that. And you look what he had to do in the middle of that defensive line. You know, Onyemata out for 6 games, and you see what he had to deal with, some of the guys he had to work there. And it's been remarkable what he has done. It's been remarkable what Dennis Allen has done, and honestly, Chris Richard as well. You know, I think you are right. If you go outside, expect some changes to the coaching staff, but if you stay within house, might not be that much change. So, with that all considered, Dennis Allen or in-house guy or Saints guy or not, do you particularly see Jameis Winston as the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints in 2022?
I'll tell you, with Sean Payton's retirement, that was after the initial shock kind of settled down, that was the next thing that went through my mind. I'm like, oh my God, literally every option on the face of the earth is now available at quarterback. I think Jameis Winston at this stage, just my own opinion, I think Jameis Winston is probably the odds-on favorite to be the quarterback for the New Orleans Saints in 2022. And I certainly felt that way, you know, before Sean Payton retired. But so much depends on this coaching hire, because you do see a lot of, you know, coaches when they take over a new job, they want their own guy at quarterback, and I don't blame them. I mean, you know, their wins and losses, their pay, and ultimately their job security depends on the position of the quarterback. You know, so I do think a lot depends on the coaching hire. A guy like Byron Leftwich, he had Jameis Winston for a year in Tampa Bay. And even though Jameis threw a lot of interceptions, he also had the most productive year statistically of his career. So there's a little bit of familiarity there. You know, Dennis Allen or any of the in-house guys, you know, if you categorize Ryan Nielsen as an outside, you know, one of those shock choices. And I would agree. If it's a guy that's currently on staff, they know Jameis Winston. They know Taysom Hill for that matter too. So, you know, certainly it's impossible to answer the quarterback question until we see the hire at head coach. But I would say personally that I think Jameis Winston is still the odds-on favorite. I realize a lot of people too, as soon as Sean retired, you know, they said, well, you know, there's no chance that a Russell Wilson is going to come here now. I think the chances are reduced, but I wouldn't rule that off the table either. If a guy like Russell Wilson or Derek Carr, if they're looking for a new place to land, to not resurrect their career, but you know, to chase a championship, they're going to be watching very closely at who this head coach ends up being. And if it's an offensive guy like a Leftwich, like an Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City, you know, would that offensive guy or that offensive philosophy coincide with what a guy like Russell Wilson wants to do? So, yeah, again, that's why the head coach hire is going to be so important, because we're going to see a lot of dominoes fall, not only at the quarterback position, but throughout free agency. How many of the in-house free agents are the Saints going to pursue? We know Payton liked to develop and re-sign in-house. Would the new coach, being an in-house guy or an outside the building guy, would the new head coach feel the same way? Because the Saints have a lot of free agent questions to answer.
You're absolutely correct. It does. Is based off who the head coach will be, and a lot of dominoes will fall after that. And I think there is a good chance that Jameis Winston will be your starting quarterback, but there is a chance that he might not be the quarterback. And honestly, there's a chance that even if you do go with an in-house guy and they do want Jameis back, there's a chance that he might go to another team. And
I believe it.
And not so that he would choose another team over us. I think it would be more with money involved. And yep, exactly. People, and people who say like the 7 games he played in is not enough. but I feel like it was absolutely enough. I think it was enough to see that he's improved from his Tampa days, and he has matured as a leader, and that's what I liked about him. It wasn't his play; it was his leadership and the way he led the team off and off the field, and his maturity has doubled in a good way. Like he has become a very matured person with the Saints, and that's what I love out of Jameis Winston. Because to be fair, when he was with Tampa, Tampa was struggling through his years there, and he's a guy that was struggling with maturity at Florida State. He just needed the proper guidance. Drew Brees, a guy he's looked up to his whole life, being able to sit under him and kind of Drew Brees, taking him under his wing last year helped out tremendously in his career. And I feel like, let's say Byron Leftwich was the head coach, I think he would absolutely love Jameis because I feel like he loved Jameis back when Jameis was a Buck. And I feel like a lot of times, the Bucks were behind. They didn't have a very good defense. Their rushing attack wasn't so great. I know they're top 15 in rushing attempts. Their rushing yardage was in the 20s. So and you're always playing from behind. You're always constantly passing the ball. So of course he was gonna throw some interceptions. Nobody would have predicted that he would have thrown 30 interceptions. But I feel like that year was an outlier for him. It really was, because you look and go his other years, Duck Cutter, his former offensive coordinator and head coach, it's kind of a similar offense with Bruce Arians and Leftwich, right? So he didn't throw that many interceptions with him, So Arians, there's a track record. There's an absolute track record. Tom Brady last year threw the most or tied or came close to throwing the most interceptions in his entire career. Ben Roethlisberger, Carson Palmer is a big one, when first year in Arizona. So I think Jameis should be the guy moving forward. I just don't see a better option unless if you were to go for a elite quarterback like a Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. But that's all I got for today. I thought it was a great show. Did you have anything else to say about the Saints, or anything that I maybe missed in some of the questions I have asked?
I tell you what, Sean. I mean, you asked some rock hard questions for sure. As far as anything to add, you and I could speculate for the next 7 hours on New Orleans Saints off season and still probably leave some stones unturned. We should probably make it a point to get together once or twice this offseason, because I think there's going to be some big news, some more big speculation. Where do the Saints go in the draft? I mean, we can't even begin that discussion again until they hire a head coach. My gosh, I mean, so many things to talk about. We didn't. It's funny. We're sitting here the day after 2 magnificent conference championship games, and we didn't even bring them up, because there's no need. There's so much to talk about our own team. I'd love to get back together with you this offseason and catch up on what's happened. Get fans ready for what's going to happen next, because there's going to be a lot of things happening.
Absolutely, and I loved it when the first time you came on, and I've been meaning to get you back on during the season, but honestly, I haven't been on lately, but I'm trying to get back into things. But I would love to cover the off season with you, and I would love to cover the draft for the most part, because the draft is my thing, and the Senior Bowl is coming up. So that's something I would look forward to, and I would look forward to having you back on.
It'd be my pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
And before we head out, where can fans check you out on social media and some of the podcasts and where they can see your Sports Illustrated articles and stuff like that?
Folks, you can follow me at Bob Rose over on Facebook, at Bobby R2613 on Twitter. And I do publish my pieces through the Saints News Network, and we do all the coverage for the SI.com, the Sports Illustrated team site for the New Orleans Saints. You can follow the Saints News Network at Saints News on Twitter, or Saints News Network over on Facebook. We have our own guy, our lead reporter, John Hendricks, is going to be at the Senior Bowl. I know I'm going to be doing tons and tons and tons of individual player profiles, for film that I've already watched on certain prospects, film that I'm going to be watching. I do publish my pieces through the Saints News Network page and also on my own personal profile, and I interact as much as possible, so keep that in mind too. Thank you, and God bless to everybody that has followed me, and for anybody that's tuned in with Sean and I today, I thank you for your time as well.
And for sure, you heard it right there, folks. Make sure you give Off the Dome Sports a like, share, and follow on all social media accounts. Make sure you follow Bob Rose, Mr. Bob Rose, on everything social media. We'll check you out next time, and we'll be back.
Sounds good, man. Thank you.
Thank you.